Welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be talking about Adalyn Grace's Wisteria, the third book in her Belladonna series. And we're really lucky because we've got some excerpts straight from the book itself
Yeah, we do.
that'll give us a taste of the story and the world.
Definitely.
But really what we want to do is focus on Blythe and Eris and their relationship, and also the magic system in the book.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that Grace does is she really digs into how complex Blythe and Eris's connection is. Right away, we see that they have an arranged marriage. It's not like this fairy tale romance. Blythe is a young woman, and she is forced into this marriage with Eris, who is the embodiment of fate, and she's not happy about it.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, their wedding night, Eris basically just leaves Blythe alone in a freezing cold room in his manor Wisteria. What a way to start a marriage, right?
Right.
But even though there's all this tension between them, you can still feel this pull that they have towards each other.
Yeah, and Grace doesn't make it easy for us to figure out what's going on. She gives us these little hints about their past. Like Eris has been searching for life, has lost love for centuries. And then we find out that Blythe is actually her reincarnation. But it's not this smooth reunion that you would expect.
It makes you wonder, if you waited centuries for someone to come back, wouldn't you be a little more welcoming? I mean, there's a definite sense of longing from Eris, but it's also possessive, you know? Like he wants to control Blythe's fate.
Yeah, that control is a really important part of the story. Eris being fate. He's used to being in charge. He orchestrates people's destinies. But then there's Blythe with her independent spirit, and she really challenges that. She represents free will in a world where everything seems to be predetermined.
And speaking of control, the magic system in Wisteria, it's so unique
Hmm.
and visually stunning. Eris can literally transform any space with his magic. In one scene, he turns this plain dining room into this huge expanse under the stars. It's like something out of a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not just about spectacle. The food at this magical dinner, it's gathered from all over the world. Which makes you think about how Eris is using his magic. Is he just taking these delicacies without any consequences?
Right.
Is there some kind of system? It makes you think about the ethics of his magic.
It is unnerving. Like, what happens to those ecosystems? And then there's the whole tapestry weaving thing,
Oh, yeah.
where Eris uses different colored threads, each one representing a different emotion,
Oh,
to literally weave people's destinies.
that's such a powerful image.
It is.
It really gets to the heart of the book's conflict.
Right.
You know, fate versus free will. If Eris can change people's emotions just by using these threads, can anyone really have control over their own lives?
That's the scary thought.
Yeah.
And then we have Verena, the city that Eris created with magic. It's described as a perfect utopia. But as we read more, we realize it's just an illusion.
Yeah.
Even Blythe's father, Elijah, who doesn't trust Eris,
Right.
he can't find anything wrong with this illusion.
It shows just how powerful Eris is, and maybe how lonely he is. Why would you build a perfect world if you don't have anyone real to share it with?
That's such a good point. Like, he's creating the perfect place for his reunion with life. But here's the thing. Even though Blythe doesn't like Eris, she starts to feel drawn to Verena. Like the illusion itself is calling to her. And then she discovers she has magic too.
Yeah.
She gets hurt and her injury heals instantly, which means she's not just an ordinary human.
Like her true nature is starting to show.
Exactly. And then she meets Solanine, this mysterious figure who seems to know who Blythe really is. And Solanine threatens her.
That's when things start to get really intense.
You do.
Solanine is dangerous. Later, we find out that she represents chaos, which is the opposite of Eris's order and control. And what's even more disturbing is that chaos was responsible for the death of Signa's mother. Remember Signa from the other books?
Yeah.
Her connection to all this adds another layer to the story.
So it's not just Blythe and Eris. It's this huge battle between order and chaos.
Yeah.
Things just got complicated.
They did. And Blythe is struggling with all of this,
Yeah.
finding out that she's the reincarnation of life. It throws her into all these different emotions, confusion, fear of her powers, and maybe even some feelings for Eris.
Oh, the drama. But then things get even darker. Blythe is poisoned,
Oh, no.
and she's close to death. And Eris, he sacrifices himself to save her.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But it also shows how much Eris loves Blythe. He goes against his own nature as fate. He gives up control to save her life. And what makes it even sadder is that he decides not to tell her the truth about who they are to each other.
He gives up everything for her.
Yeah.
Even the chance for them to really know each other. It's so selfless, but so tragic. Wow. We've only read excerpts, and I'm already feeling emotional.
I know.
The way they feel about each other, the sacrifices they make.
It's incredibly powerful. It really makes you think about what love is. Is it about possessing someone and controlling them?
Yeah.
Or is it about letting go even if it means losing yourself?
Okay, now we're getting deep. I think we've only scratched the surface of what Wisteria is about. There's so much more to explore, like what happens after Eris sacrifices himself and how Blythe discovers who she truly is.
Yeah, definitely. And don't forget about the threat of chaos
Yeah.
and what's going on with Blythe's brother Percy, who seems to be connected to Solanine somehow. There's a lot more to uncover. So stay tuned as we dig deeper into this amazing world in our next segment. You know, one of the things that really stands out in Wisteria is how Grace balances these big external conflicts with these really personal internal struggles that Blythe is going through. Like she's dealing with this arranged marriage, and then her powers are starting to awaken, and she's realizing that her life is part of this huge battle.
It's a lot for one person to handle. Imagine finding out that you're not who you thought you were, that you're actually the reincarnation of this powerful being, and that your very existence is tied to the fate of the universe.
It would be overwhelming.
Totally.
And Grace doesn't shy away from showing how all this affects Blythe mentally and emotionally. We see her wrestling with fear and confusion, and even a sense of betrayal.
She's been thrown into this crazy situation with no guidance.
Right.
She has to figure out this world where nothing is what it seems.
That's right.
And then there's that awful scene when she goes back to Thorngrove, her childhood home, and she finds her mother's grave desecrated.
Oh, yeah.
It's heartbreaking, and it's a real turning point for Blythe.
It is.
It's like that violation awakens something deep inside her, both her grief and her powers.
That scene has so much symbolism. It represents chaos invading Blythe's life, the loss of her innocence, and the destruction of the only safe place she knew.
It shows that she's not just a girl forced into a marriage anymore. She's a major player in this dangerous game.
Exactly.
And her powers,
Yeah.
the way she can control plants and heal herself, it's amazing. But there's also this sense of danger, like she could lose control.
It's like she has this immense power flowing through her,
Yeah.
but she doesn't know how to use it yet. It's a classic story you see a lot in fantasy. The hero has to go on this journey of self-discovery. They have to learn to control their powers and face their fears. And for Blythe, that fear is represented by Solanine.
Solanine is terrifying.
She is.
She's like this dark mirror of Blythe. She reminds Blythe of the potential for destruction that's within her own powers. And Solanine taunts Blythe. She reveals bits and pieces of Blythe's past. It's like another layer of torture.
It's really smart how Grace uses that to build suspense. Solanine's words are like poison. They plant seeds of doubt and fear in Blythe's mind.
And it forces Blythe to deal with her own anxieties, but also the bigger implications of being the reincarnation of life. Like, the fate of the world depends on her.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is. And then there's her brother Percy. He's somehow involved with Solanine and chaos.
Right.
It's like this whole family is caught in the middle of this cosmic war.
It adds a whole other level of drama. It's this classic fight between order and chaos, light and dark. And Blythe. She's connected to both life and Eris, who represents fate. She's right at the center of it all.
So she has to choose a side.
Yeah.
She has to decide her own destiny.
Exactly.
And then there's that scene where Eris sacrifices himself to save Blythe from the poison. It's so sad.
It really is.
The way he holds her and whispers to her.
And then just fades away.
Oh, man. Pass the tissues.
It shows just how much he loves her.
Yeah.
He goes against his own nature as fate. He gives up control, all to save her life. And he chooses not to tell her the truth about who they are to each other.
He sacrifices everything.
He does.
His life, and even the chance for them to have a real relationship. It's incredibly selfless,
Right.
but it's also just devastating.
It's like he's setting her free, giving her the chance to make her own choices, without the weight of their past connection.
But it leaves Blythe completely heartbroken. The scene where she goes back to Wisteria, and it's empty. All the magic and life that Eris brought to it is gone.
It's like a reflection of how she feels inside. All the color, the illusions, the energy, it's all gone. And there's this emptiness that's left behind.
And Grace captures Blythe's grief so perfectly. She's withdrawn and silent.
Almost like she's in shock.
Yeah.
It's as if a part of her died with Eris.
She's lost her anchor, her purpose, and then her father Elijah tries to help her through it. He encourages her to paint, to reconnect with the world through art.
It's a reminder that even when you're going through something terrible, there's still beauty in the world.
There's still life to be lived.
It's a really powerful message of hope. Elijah's grieving too, and he was suspicious of Eris. But he knows Blythe needs to find her own way to heal. He doesn't pressure her to talk or express her feelings. He just gives her the space to grieve. and to find comfort in creating something.
It shows how strong their family bond is.
It
It's
does.
like he's saying, it's okay to be sad, to feel broken, but don't let the darkness consume you.
And then Blythe starts to come out of her shell a little.
She visits Cigna and Silas.
It's a nice lighthearted moment in a story that's been pretty heavy.
It is.
It's good to see those friends supporting each other.
And Silas drinking tea, it's adorable.
It is. But their conversation is also important. They talk about chaos and the consequences of their choices.
And how important it is to keep going even when it feels impossible.
Yeah. It reminds us that Blythe isn't fighting this battle alone.
And then Blythe realizes that she'll never really be okay, but she can choose to rebuild her life around her grief.
That's a powerful realization.
It is.
She's accepting her pain as part of who she is now.
She's not trying to forget the past, but she's finding a way to make it part of her present and future.
It's a mature way of looking at grief and healing. Blythe knows that moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding a way to honor her loss, while still living and loving and experiencing the world.
And just when you think Blythe is starting to figure things out, Grace throws in this huge cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah.
That vision of Eris, alive and well, taking care of a garden.
Looks like a glimmer of hope.
Like maybe he's not really gone.
But is it real? Or is it another illusion? Is it fate playing a cruel trick on Blythe?
It's the perfect cliffhanger.
It really is.
It makes you think about all the possibilities. Is it really Eris? Did he somehow come back to life? Or is it just Blythe's grief manifesting itself?
It makes you wonder if love can actually conquer fate, or if some destinies are just too painful to ever have a happy ending.
I can't stop thinking about that last scene with Eris in the garden. It's like so hopeful, the wisteria blooming, the sense of rebirth. Is it really Eris? Or is it just another illusion?
I know, right? It's a total cliffhanger. Grace leaves us wondering if maybe Eris found a way to come back, or if it's just Blythe's grief manifesting, like she wants him back so much that her mind is creating this image.
And that garden, it feels so symbolic. Gardens often represent growth, renewal, even paradise.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's hinting that Eris is transformed somehow.
Like he's moved beyond being fate.
Exactly.
But even if it is him, what does that mean for them? Their relationship has always been so messy. So much love, but also control and sacrifice. Can they really be happy together after all that?
It's the big question, isn't it? Can love really overcome fate? Or are some destinies just too intertwined with pain to ever truly work out?
It's a question that people have been asking for centuries.
It is.
And I think Grace does a great job of exploring it in a new way. You know, the part where Blythe visits Cigna and Silas, and they talk about choosing to live even when you're grieving. That really hit home for me.
Me too.
It reminds us that life isn't about avoiding pain. It's about learning to live with it, to grow from it,
Yeah.
to embrace all the ups and downs.
I think that's one of the things I love most about Wisteria. It's not just a fantasy novel. It's a story about being resilient, about how love and hope can help us through anything, about finding the strength to rebuild ourselves even when everything falls apart.
It makes you think about what you believe about love and destiny.
It does.
Like, do we really have control over our own lives? Or are we just playing out roles that have already been written?
And I think that's what makes Wisteria so engaging. It digs into these deep questions about life. It makes us think about fate and free will, and the choices we make when we don't know what the future holds.
So what about you listening right now? What did this deep dive make you think about? What questions are you left with?
Maybe you're thinking about the sacrifices we make for the people we love, or how grief can change us, or the fact that even in the darkest times, there's always hope.
Wisteria gives us so much to think about.
It does.
It makes us consider our own place in the grand scheme of things. It's a book that stays with you.
Definitely.
I can't wait to see what happens next in the series, to see what fate has in store for Blythe and Eris and their world. But until then, happy reading, everyone.